We're hoping today we can finish up this project for Vlad. He's anxious to get the bike put back together. And all of the carbon fiber work we did is looking like it dried up beautifully. And we'll clean it up for him with a buffing wheel when we're done. Today we would like to try to finish up the BUELL fairing parts for Vlad, the carbon fiber reinforcements that we did. I want to show how to drill the holes and how to dress everything off, and to create that little piece that we had to make that wasn't there, that missing piece. I'm going to try to put that all on a video, but first I got to take care of help Karen harvest for the farm for the day, and then I basically am going to get down to the shop and try to put some of this useful information on video. Now, just one quick point of reference. When I did this restoration, this was 900 hours, and by the way, it's all out on the channel. All of the hard points where it mounts, every one of them is reinforced the way I'm doing for Vlad's BUELL. And this is probably 5-6 years later. A lot of rough riding, a lot of bumps in the road, not one crack. Then the birds are as hungry as ever. It doesn't matter whether you ride, work on motorcycles, or just work on a farm. So we just got in from the harvest. This is today's harvest, and the cukes are growing like crazy now. The bees are doing their thing, and we have fresh beans every night. And of course lettuce, plenty of lettuce, and plenty of flowers.
And basil.
And basil. Don't let me forget the basil. Unfortunately, the critter cleaned out our snow peas. Come on, boys. Finish up that BUELL project. We have bigger fish to fry. They don't want to hear that. So step one, as always, there's always a good place to start. We want to pull off all the outside tape, and hopefully none of the epoxy worked its way through. And I want to show this up close because we have 100 of these to do, and show that little, well, let me show it on a close-up. That little hole now is ready to just run our special burr that we have for doing this. Not a drill, it's a special burr. Now, the one thing, if you're new to carbon fiber, you'll find out the hard way. When carbon fiber needs a hole drilled in it, and you go to put, in this case it's about 1/4 inch hole, you run a drill through there and it catches, or it's not a step drill. A step drill is better than a regular drill, but the real correct way to do it to get a nice fit is to take a burr. These are Dremel tool burrs, and they're not the Chinese rip-off ones. These are the real ones from Dremel, and I've had them for years. And then you need one of them to dress off the corners and some of the square spots. So having these burrs and getting a nice fit on the holes is really a critical thing at this point. Now, this is my well-used, you could call it a fake Dremel tool. It's a Harbor Freight tool. It's under $20. Once you have one, you can use it for polishing and deburring and doing exactly what we're doing now. I have the speed taped shut at a speed that I know it's going to go through carbon without a problem. If you go through with a drill, it's high risk. With a burr, you're basically just burning your way through, and that's probably the best tip on the video. So I'm putting a lot of this in fast forward to keep the video from getting too long. Getting the tape off, using a little bit of heat, always a good idea. Even though this is not paint, just makes taking the tape off easy. You don't get your fingernails all chewed up as much. And the little burr, drilling out the holes carefully, it's really, you just have to really be careful, because if that burr catches and you put a big scratch in this material, it's not going to be a fun day. Anyway, the burrs do a great job, and the first time you try to drill a hole in thin carbon fiber and it cracks, you'll learn a hard lesson. Now, the reason for keeping everything sanded, because there's little razor blades where the carbon fiber and the epoxy have dried. I don't want to get one, absolutely not get one under my fingernail. Now, what works the best for me to clean up the holes is a stone countersink and a drill press, and all the big holes where the blinkers are and everything. The little ones don't really matter. They clean up nice with the tool, but that's a good little tip. Keeping the work area clean so you're not unnecessarily breathing any of this in. It's a good idea to wear a mask, of course. And if I'm not shooting video, I always wear a mask. But when I'm shooting video, it just gets cumbersome. I do like to keep the workplace clean. Here's one of the pieces that's done. We're ready to move on to the second piece. A lot of this stuff is redundant, and you only really have to see it once. The second part goes a lot faster. And the square holes with that pointy tip tool works great. The reinforcements really worked out well on this, and I think they're going to be plenty strong for the application that we're using. The whole thing when you have multiple parts is, and that's why I put a lot of stuff in fast forward, the second part usually goes a little faster, but it's still time consuming because there's a lot of parts of this. There's a lot of little holes to fill and grind and sand and dress off the edges, and that little part we have to create up in the front. And I want to get the parts as accurate as possible. I don't want the holes to get all crooked and egg-shaped and everything. So using that stone, the little stone countersink, and using a Dremel tool, both of those things seem to work pretty well. And we should be able to have this done in this session. That's what I'm shooting for. Now, because most of this is really redundant, it just gets time consuming though. You think that, oh yeah, that's going to go in for 5 minutes, and it winds up taking 20 minutes. And then whenever you're using carbon fiber, you don't want to leave any sharp edges. Putting a bike back together, you're definitely going to cut yourself. Or the dried carbon fiber, when it hardens up, it just turns into a razor blade. So I've gotten very fussy about keeping it, before I even do the rest of the work on the part of buffing it out or anything. I really didn't want to have something I'm holding. It's like holding a box of razor blades with my bare hands. But laying the parts on the floor, the front parts came out real nice. The big part has a lot of scratches in it that I'm going to try to get some of them out with the buffing wheel. And I've got to work on that little part up in the nose that's missing. Now it's pretty much the same, all the same techniques that we had on the smaller part, and now we have to do on a bigger part, except for that one piece that we have to work on up in the corner. So to keep the video from turning into a too long video, I'll get most of this done off camera and then come back up. It's going to be exactly the same as the beginning, and then work on that piece. That's the critical piece up there. So this is now one of the more difficult parts of this job. This piece was missing, and I need to know where that hole is. I can live without some of this piece touching, but I can't live without that hole, because that hole is going to bolt this in place. So what I wanted to do is, I'm just going to do this, make myself a little pattern. That's the point. There's the hole right there. I can pretty much see impression here, because I need to do this reversed. I need to have that reversed. Let's just make sure. So I can grind away and get that as accurate as possible where the hole is going to be, and then put that hole in. Because if they don't line up, of course, it's a problem. So let's just see if this, yeah, that's pretty close. Okay, so that's our little pattern. Now we got to, I did all of these parts already. This is ready for the final cleanup. Getting these holes squared off with the real pointy burr. I think everything on here is going to be structurally fine. This part up here really can't be fixed because we don't have any red anything. So, and luckily I think the mirror covers part of that up, but in the final analysis we'll see how that's going to work out when we do the custom painting over the winter. And that could be filled with something, but right now, getting this onto the other piece is going to be the hardest part of the job. Now, I had created this piece with carbon fiber on the previous video, and I pull off all the tape here. I'm looking forward to seeing how that laid out. Should be fine. So this is the piece that's actually missing. We're going to have to line this up and get that hole drilled in there, and then we can shape by hand with a sanding block, shape the rest of that piece. Now it's really not important that this is a cosmetic thing, because it's hidden, but that bolt hole is an important thing to have. Now once I got the tape off, the tape acted as a little bit of a male mold, and getting rid of all the overage carbon fiber here was really this is a time consuming job. And I did most of the shaping just looking at it by eye. Sanding block, some 100 grit paper, and just trying to eyeball it up, walk over, look at the other piece, what the shape looks like, and then ultimately I'm going to use that little pattern to center the hole that we're going to use, because that bolt I'm sure is attaching, and it's a support for the fairing itself. And the thing is, even leaving out one bolt on a fairing this thin, it's just going to turn it into I don't know, a sailboat or something. I am amazed that they get away with having these parts so thin. I mixed up some JB just to try to stiffen this up a little bit, because this is probably a part. If this part broke, there's probably a reason. There's a stress riser here or something. And since it's not a spot we see, it's not a visible spot, this'll reinforce it some anyway. And while this is drying, we can clean up some of the other parts. Now remember, this was the part of it that actually was missing. But on the JB Weld, if it dries up the way I want, we can do a final shaping. Now we're just going to let that dry and work on some of the other parts, cleaning them up. I was curious to see how the 8065 was going to work on this plastic. Actually, it worked out pretty good. It got out a lot of the scratches. Now, using the 8065 and a clean buffing pad, it did get out a lot of the scratches, but some of the scratches on this are so deep, it almost looks like, if this were paint, we'd already be into the primer. But I don't know how far down you can really go in this plastic. And since it's so thin, the only good part is you don't have to worry about buffing through. The whole part has died. But it was easy to get out the minor scratches. The deep ones, I don't know. So I spent what was the remainder of the work session to try to get as many of the scratches out as I could, get the parts as nice as possible. And I got, to be honest, most of them came out, but there are some deep gouges in here. This bike had a rough service life before Vlad bought it. Rough around the fairing mounts too. And just cleaning it up for him as best I can, so when he picks it up, he basically should be able to just go home and assemble a bike, and maybe we'll get to see it all in one piece up at Perry's very soon. Well, this really was a job I didn't think was going to ever end. It just went on forever. But we do have it done now, and I even ran the buffer on with some of the scratches. This thing was in pretty rough shape when it came into the shop. We cleaned up, I'd say 90% of them, and when the bike is assembled, it's a good idea to run the buffer over it again, of course. The nice thing about this, you can't go through the paint. It's plastic all the way through. Anyway, and it seems like the 8065 did a good job on it. So anyway, if you have a BUELL and your fairing didn't crack yet, this might be a good idea to do it before it does. Just a thought. And that's why I put that intro on there. So this is the third part, but there's an intro, so there's actually 4 parts to this. Didn't want to get them too long. Hope you got some good information from the video, and I don't know what to say. I would have made these parts a little bit thicker myself. Just a thought for when you buy a BUELL, check the fairings. So that project worked out pretty good for Vlad. I hope that's going to satisfy his need and get him through the summer. And in the winter we'll decide what kind of custom paintwork he's going to put on there. I'm not sure. We usually don't do this kind of work in the summer. It's unusual, but we never let our friends down either. That's the other side of this. So, and we're going to get back to riding now. This has been a nice hiatus from, we lost 3 good riding days here. I'm going to charge Vlad for that. He's going to buy me coffee from now, well, coffee, vodka, from now until Christmas. Vlad, I hope you like it. And it's time to figure out what bike we're going to ride tomorrow. Thanks for watching.